Welcome, everyone. I'm delighted to be here with you today and to share this webinar on Earth as Common Ground, the call for a moral voice. Just going to wait a moment because I see more people entering. All right, welcome everyone. I'm Sister C.J. Willie, and I'm here to share with you today a presentation entitled Earth as Common Ground, the Call for a Moral Voice. And to begin with, I'd like to start with a quote from the former head of the UN Environment Program, Klaus Topfer. He says, "We have entered a new age, an age where all of us will have to sign a new compact with our environment and enter into the larger community of all living beings. A new sense of our communion with planet Earth must enter our minds." And I'd like to show a very short video that kind of takes a look at how we got to where we are and where we find ourselves today, so that we can then begin to look at what can we do about it. This video shows so clearly the ingenuity that we have, but also the desire to always be better than someone else. And ultimately, world leaders that see no evil, hear no evil, speak no evil. They don't want to see the realities because it does involve a transformation of consciousness and a change in the way we live our lives. And so the World Parliament of Religions and UNEP have collaborated, realizing that the world is home to many religions and that what has been lacking from all of the discussions is the moral voice. And that is the role that we play. And this poem by Radha Sadar says, the whole of planet Earth is a sacred site. All people are the chosen people. And the purpose of our lives is a spiritual one. May we care for each other and for the earth, for everything relates to everything else. Feeling this oneness, may we radiate the light of love and kindness that all may live in unity and peace. And so with the publication of their book called Faith for Earth, A Call for Action, they say that it is time as never before to call on our faith, our values, our religious teachings and traditions on Faith for Earth, and it is time for action. And this book is totally downloadable online. It was a collaborative effort between the UN Environment Program and the Parliament of World Religions. The UN Environment Program says that spiritual values for more than 80% of the people living on Earth have been driving individual behaviors. In many countries, spiritual beliefs and religions are main drivers for cultural values, social inclusion, political engagement, and economic prosperity. And around 84% of the global population is affiliated with one or more of the estimated 4,300 religious and spiritual communities in existence today. The mission of the World Parliament of Religions is to cultivate harmony among the world's religious and spiritual communities and foster their engagement with the world and its guiding institutions in order to achieve a just, peaceful, and sustainable world. And so the Faith for Earth collaborative initiative is designed to encourage, empower, and engage with faith-based organizations as partners at all levels toward achieving the Sustainable Development Goals and fulfilling the 2030 Agenda. It's a vision that holds a world where everything is in balance. And so the Sustainable Development Goals were an outcome of the 2012 Rio Conference on the Earth. It was the second Earth Conference. If you recall, some of you may remember, in 1992 was the first World Conference on the Environment held in Rio de Janeiro. Out of that conference came the Charter for the Earth, or the Earth Charter, which is an incredible document. This second one I was able to attend, as at that time I was working at the United Nations as the NGO representative for the Sisters of Charity Federation, and listened to each government talk about how important it was that we work together and that we collaborate. And yet we still find ourselves at odds with each other. However, these Sustainable Development Goals were an outgrowth of that conference. It took 3 years to develop them. And initially it was hoped that they would be fewer in number than the Millennium Development Goals, which were 8. However, at the first conferences which I attended, they came up with 78 goals. Finally, they were brought down to 17. And all but 2 countries in the world signed on to this document, including the United States. And so these goals are to eliminate poverty, to have zero hunger, good health and well-being for all the people of the planet, quality education, gender equality, clean water and sanitation, affordable and clean energy, decent work and economic growth, industry, innovation, and infrastructure, reduced inequalities, sustainable cities and communities, responsible consumption and production, climate action, life below water, life on land, peace, justice, and strong institutions, and of course, partnerships to meet these goals. It's now 2024, and we are nowhere near meeting these goals. And the voice for faith communities to get involved is growing louder and louder. The 5 key elements that underpin the SDGs are people, prosperity, peace, partnerships, and care for the planet. And of course, prosperity is looking at ensuring prosperous and fulfilling lives in harmony with nature. Peace looks to foster peaceful, just, and inclusive societies. And the need for global partnerships. That we have to look at preserving our planet's natural resources and climate for future generations. And the only way we are going to be able to accomplish these goals is by ending hunger and poverty in all its forms, ensuring dignity and equality and the participation of all. And so the message from the Faith for Earth initiative is that in the last 60 years, more than 40% of the world's civil wars have been linked to control over natural resources, such as land, oil, and water. That climate change continues to be one of the most systemic environmental threats that humankind has ever faced, and that we need a common ethical system of values, no matter what religion we believe. One of the committees that I served on at the United Nations was the Interfaith Committee, and it gave me a tremendous appreciation for the value systems held in all religious traditions. And that is what this message from the Faith for Earth is calling for us to look at our own religious tradition and to share the values that we have in common. One of my favorite quotes is from the Dalai Lama, who said, "It doesn't matter what religion you are. What does matter is that you live deeply out of your religious tradition, and I live deeply out of mine, because then we will be able to live in harmony." We are the first generation in human history that has the opportunity to achieve sustainable and just societies. We have the knowledge, the technology, and the wealth to succeed. The context in which we will make our choices must include the full panoply of faith, science, and societal institutions. If these institutions are to become agents of sustainability, they will need to be enabled by knowledge and inspired by faith. And so I know that you cannot read, I know that you cannot read this too clearly, but it's the ecological wisdom from faith traditions. And it's available at resources at Faith Community, faithscommongood.org. And so it says, "Do unto the earth as you would have it do unto you." And as we looked at the Turtle World video, bear in mind that Turtle World is the term that Indigenous peoples use for earth. In the beginning, it was beautiful and it was green, and it had the food it needed to survive. But gradually it was destroyed. And when it turned to eat, there was nothing left. And that's where we stand today. And so we have to look at what each tradition, what each of our traditions is saying, and live deeply out of them and in harmony with one another. The question before us, can religions come together for the sake of our planet? It is absolutely essential. As people of faith, we can fix the world. It's a collaborative effort. The Faith for Earth Coalition is a global platform which facilitates cooperation and collaboration with and among faith leaders and faith-based organizations, FBOs, in finding long-lasting solutions to environmental challenges and achieving the Sustainable Development Goals, the SDGs. It aims at facilitating partnerships at every level to inspire, empower, and strengthen action and behavioral changes towards achieving the SDGs and implementing UNEP's program of work. One Earth, many religions, one goal. Did you know that faith-based organizations run 50% of the schools worldwide and 64% in sub-Saharan Africa? The SDGs and scientific environmental knowledge should become embedded in school curricula, helping to ensure that children become climate activists from a young age. So the question before each of us is, are our schools teaching the Sustainable Development Goals? There is actually only one state in the United States that has climate change as a part of its curriculum. 49 do not. Does yours? Collectively, religious organizations produce more books and publications than any other network. There are numerous faith-owned, operated, or inspired TV, radio stations, and online platforms. These factors give faith-based organizations immense outreach, potentially enabling them to inspire adherents all around the world. Faith-based organizations own approximately 6 to 8% of global wealth and therefore have the potential to change the world with their investments. And so a question each of us has to ask is, how are our faith communities' assets being invested? And there are a number of organizations that are willing to help with that. There is a special series in partnership with the Global Impact Investing Network. There's a blueprint for faith-based organization on using finance as a tool for social change. The blueprint focuses on showing how faith-based organizations can use finance as a tool in their work. How? By disrupting or influencing current systems, forging new alliances or partnerships with individuals and organizations that are already using finance for social change, or by crafting new models that fundamentally shift how power operates in the economic and financial relationships within a community. As Vandana Shiva says to us, it's not an investment if it's destroying the planet. And so young people are telling us, diverse for climate justice. So what kinds of institutions are divesting? Faith-based organizations has the largest number of people divesting, 28%. And so that's approximately $6.09 trillion. 852 institutions divesting, 58,000 individuals divesting about $5.2 billion. So our homework is find out where your faith community is investing its assets. Responsible investment includes healthy food, climate, minimal waste, reduce poverty, promote justice, peace and security, human health, do no harm, improve the human condition, companies of the future, clean energy, fresh water. Organizations that can help us to do this are Interfaith Power and Light, Many Faiths, One Earth. All are called to respond to climate change. And of course, they have a website, and each state has its own branch of the Interfaith Power and Light organization. Another organization is the Interfaith Center on Corporate Responsibility. They pioneered the use of shareholder advocacy to press companies on environmental, social, and governance issues. Their coalition of over 300 global institutional investors currently represents more than $4 trillion in managed assets. They are leveraging their equity ownership in some of the world's largest and most powerful companies. ICCR members regularly engage management to identify and mitigate social and environmental risks resulting from corporate operations and policies. The value of faith-based organizations is that they are dynamic and sustainable institutions, existing for a long time and cultivating deep networks in communities in which they are situated. They're highly networked and part of transnational or even global structures that cross political boundaries, giving them great depth and agility at all levels. They're able to equip and deploy their many adherents to volunteer for a good cause at a grassroots level, which can have reverberating results within communities. Today in our own country, when we find ourselves so at odds with each other, even within faith communities, we do have structures and values which can overcome that if we're each willing to look deeply into our own traditions and say, how can we collaborate for the good of all? Faith and care for creation is a common denominator for all religious traditions. In the book, Faith for Earth, A Call for Action, they delineate the points of agreement among the world's religions and call them environmental ethics. And these are the points of agreement. The natural world has value in itself and does not exist solely to serve human needs. There is a significant continuity of being between human and non-human living beings. Even though humans do have a distinctive role, this continuity can be felt and experienced. Non-human living beings are morally significant in the eyes of God and or in the cosmic order. They have their own unique relationships to God by whatever name we choose to call God, and their own places in the cosmic order. The dependence of human life on the natural world can and should be acknowledged in ritual and other expressions of appreciation and gratitude. Moral norms such as justice, compassion, and reciprocity apply both to human beings and to non-human beings. The well-being of humans and the well-being of non-human beings are inseparably connected. There are legitimate and illegitimate uses of nature. All of our religious traditions condemn greed and destruction and ask for restraint and protection of our natural resources. And all say that human beings are obliged to be aware and responsible for living in harmony with the natural world and should follow the specific practices for this prescribed by their tradition. If we want to look at houses of worship worldwide, there are approximately 37 million churches, 4 million mosques, 20,000 synagogues, and hundreds of millions of temples. These houses of worship can become minarets of sustainability and examples of how religious beliefs demonstrate the concept of stewardship and human responsibility towards the environment. One of the things that is recommended is forming green teams within a congregation. And this book is available free to download from the UN Environment Program entitled Guidelines on Green Houses of Worship. So we are on the path to environmental sustainability. We each have to determine what role we wish to take. Where do we begin? Well, we have to recognize that as a human civilization, we are at a paradigm shift. And this is often how we react to a paradigm shift. It means a change in how we live our lives. It means reevaluating the values that we hold. It means rediscovering the values that our faith traditions teach. And Chief Seattle said, we need to develop a community of creation. Sociologist Anthony Wallace says that we are at a revitalization moment. He says stage one is serious individual stress. We see that everywhere. Stage two, alienation everywhere. Again, we are seeing so much of us against them. Neighbor against neighbor. Religious tradition against religious tradition. Political party against political party. But he says stage three is people agree there is a problem, but not how to cope with it. And I think this is where we find ourselves today. We know there is a problem, but not how to cope with it. And yet UNEP and the World Parliament of Religion are saying, but we do know how to cope. Our religious traditions have those answers. And so stage four is the emergence of a new worldview and the restructuring of old institutions to enable it. So it means we really have to reevaluate the institutions of which we are a part. Are they living up to the values that they were founded for? And Rumi tells us we also have to look within. The entrance to the sanctuary is inside of each one of us. And so we need a morality shift. We need to move from egocentric ethics towards sociocentric ethics and ultimately to ecocentric ethics. There are three aspects of religion: a world or cosmovision, that's our worldview, how we perceive the world, a value system or ethics, and a set of practices or way of life that attune our individual and the community to that worldview. And so we always have to question, what is our worldview? I'm sure if many of you have heard other webinars I have given, I frequently quote the Haitian proverb, "We see from where we stand." And if we always stand in the same place, we always see the same thing. And yet all of our traditional religions, all of our religious traditions invite us to have a worldview, to step outside of our individual spot and move towards someone else's and take a look at the world from a different point of view. And so rather than stick our head in the sands, let's say, oh, wow, paradigm shift. Isn't that exciting? And what does it mean for us? Well, first of all, let's look at our sacred writings. What do your sacred texts say about nature and care for creation and care for humanity and care for all non-human beings? Study your sacred texts individually. Form small groups to share your understandings. Invite your pastor, rabbi, or imam to share his or her understanding. Find out what other houses of worship are doing in your neighborhoods. Get together, share your resources. Conduct an environmental assessment of your house of worship. What are they already doing? For example, recycling, LED lights, planting trees, solar panels. Start a green team. And it can start with just 3 or more people from a house of worship who provide cooperative leadership to educate, connect, and educate for healthier communities. Green teams meet regularly. They set goals for their house of worship. They connect spiritual traditions with earth care and justice for our neighbors. They plan activities and educate to encourage eco-friendly behaviors. They connect with the community at large to expand their impact. They advocate for earth care policies. They measure benchmarks. They celebrate accomplishments. Of course, they don't all do this in one day. It takes time and effort and consistency. Look at the land use of your house of worship. Do you have a lot of land? Think about planting vegetables for a local food bank, providing space for community gardens, starting an orchard. The Green Umbrella has a common orchard project that will help you with that initiative. Begin replacing invasive species with native plants. Look at the energy use of your house of worship. Look at how much you could save just by changing to LED lights. They can reduce energy costs, they have a longer life, and they're mercury-free and generate less heat. Look at solar power. The advantages of solar energy: renewable energy, long-lasting, easy installment, return on investment. They're a safe option, and there are now government incentives and improved efficiency. The Inflation Reduction Act has a section on federal funding for energy work at houses of worship. Explore that. Looking at eco tips, publish them in bulletins, on websites, on Facebook pages. For instance, a simple one. An easy one is to buy laundry strips like Earth Breeze or True Earth for your washing machine instead of a liquid or pod packaged in plastic. I use these myself. They look like dryer sheets, except that the detergent is included in the sheet and you simply drop it in the washer and the detergent is released. A more challenging one is to write to the head of a corporation that makes laundry detergent, like P&G, which is based in Cincinnati, and urge them to reduce plastic packaging. Susan Vogt has a website at susanvogt1@gmail.com, which has excellent eco tips, which you can then republish in your bulletins, on your website, or on your Facebook pages. She also has an excellent resource on single-use plastics. Look at environmental book clubs. The Faith Communities Go Green initiative has one, but form one in your own community. Begin to talk about these initiatives that can help to make changes A good one to start with is Cranky Uncle versus Climate Change, which was written by a climate scientist who also happens to be a cartoonist. And his book takes and makes excellent examples of what we can do when we try to dialogue with people who are looking at it very differently. Start a children's book club with environmental books. Okay? Begin educational sessions in your houses of worship on shopping with a conscience, on alternative gift giving, on eco-spirituality, on composting, recycling, calculating your ecological footprint, eco-justice, legislative advocacy, native plants, environmental racism. Invite guest speakers. Help is available. Faith Communities Go Green is a relatively new initiative founded about 2 years ago as a collaboration now between Green Umbrella and Equation. The website is fcgg.org and provides innumerable examples of things that faith communities can do and makes every attempt to bring faith communities together. There is an education and learning component, an advocacy component, and a facilities component, all of which are there to help you to make your faith community a greener community. Its mission is to partner with religious communities to create a more sustainable and equitable future for all by mobilizing that moral voice to reduce the risk of catastrophic climate change. It's designed to collaborate to integrate care for creation in the lives of our lives as well as in society. The current UN Secretary General tells us we are in a race against time that will require political will, innovation, inclusion, tolerance, values, and ethics, financing, and partnership. The world has the scientific understanding, the technological capacity, and the financial needs to meet this challenge. It is not that we do not know how. It is how quickly we can fix it. We know what to do. We just don't have the political will. How do we change that? Microfinancing is one of the initiatives in developing countries that is helping to bring to fruition the SDGs in many of those countries. So a question as faith-based people that we have to ask is, what is our grace margin? Not only as individuals, but also as congregations. In the center is our comfort zone. It's where we are most happy. It's where other people agree with us. And therefore, we think that that's the way the world ought to work. But God, by whatever name we choose to call God, is always calling us outside of our comfort zones to move into our grace margin. And that grace margin is different for each individual as well as for each congregation. If you haven't started recycling, then maybe that's where you're being called. If you're doing multiple things, like the man in the Bible who says to Jesus, I'm doing all those things, what more can I do? Well, what's next for you? Because that grace margin is always an invitation to grow in your faith, whatever that tradition is. What you don't want to do is push people into their fear zone, because when we do that, we paralyze them. We paralyze ourselves. So ask yourself, where is God calling me to move out of my comfort zone? And where is God calling our congregation to move out of our comfort zone? And sometimes we say, but what can one person do? And so I'd like to leave you with a fable. It's called The Mousetrap. And it says, a mouse looked through the crack in the wall and saw the farmer and his wife open a package. What food might this contain? The mouse wondered. He was devastated to discover it was a mousetrap. Retreating to the farmyard, the mouse proclaimed the warning. There's a mousetrap in the house. There's a mousetrap in the house. The chicken clucked and scratched, raised her head and said, "You know, Mr. Mouse, I can tell this is of grave concern to you, but really, it's of no consequence to me. I really can't be bothered by it." So the mouse turns to the pig and yells, "There's a mousetrap in the house." The pig sympathized, but said, "I'm so very sorry, Mr. Mouse, but there's nothing I can do but pray. Be assured you are in my prayers." Turns to the cow and says, "There's a mousetrap in the house." And the cow looks and says, "Well, Mr. Mouse, I'm sorry for you, but it's no skin off my nose." So the poor mouse returns to the house, head down and dejected, to face the farmer's mousetrap alone. That very night, a sound was heard throughout the house like the sound of a mousetrap catching its prey. The farmer's wife rushed to see what was caught in the darkness. She did not see it was a venomous snake whose tail the trap had caught. The snake bit the farmer's wife. The farmer rushed her to the hospital, and she returned home with a fever. Everyone knows you treat a fever with fresh chicken soup. So the farmer took his hatchet to the farmyard for the soup's main ingredient. But his wife's sickness continued. So friends and neighbors came to sit with her around the clock. To feed them, the farmer butchered the pig. The farmer's wife did not get well. She died. So many people came for her funeral. The farmer had the cow slaughtered to provide enough meat for all of them. The mouse looked upon it all from his crack in the wall with great sadness. So the next time you hear someone is facing a problem and think it doesn't concern you, remember, when one of us is threatened, we are all at risk. As we look at climate change today, we have to recognize that it affects planet Earth and each of us who are citizens on that planet. Each of us, if we just look at what is happening in the world right now, can see the devastation that is being caused in so many places and affecting so many different people. And so it is time as never before to call on our faith, our values, our religious teachings, and their traditions on Faith for Earth. And it is time for each of us individually and as communities to take action. There is no place like home, and there may never be again unless each of us does our part individually and as members of faith communities. And so if there are any questions, I am more than happy to address them.
Sister CJ, would you like me to read some of the questions that people have already
Yes,
submitted?
please. That would be helpful.
Okay, great. So the first question that we have is, how has the gospel inspired this effort?
I think the gospel, which is certainly pertinent to Christian traditions, has a long history of care for creation. But I do want to point out that every sacred text has that. They all call for us to be stewards of creation, not to be dominators over creation. We often translate words incorrectly and assume that human beings have a right to be over all of creation, but we're actually called by every religious tradition to be in partnership with all of creation.
Thank you. The next question is, have you seen efforts by diverse faiths to support the environment? Maybe I would adjust this just a bit. What are the efforts that you've seen by diverse faiths to support the environment?
Well, I certainly see that organizations such as Equation, such as MARC, such as Faith Communities Go Green, are all initiatives that are collaborating to help faith communities to achieve that goal. I think various individual initiatives are trying to share what they have done. Mount Auburn Presbyterian Church has done magnificent work over the last 10 years in the area of environmental sustainability. They have opened their house of worship. They have provided days on which you can come and see what they have done. And I think other traditions have also done that. We're looking more and more at how can we work together. We don't have to do this alone. There are a number of parishes and different religious congregations that have now formed green teams. And Faith Communities Go Green is trying to connect them with each other and continuing to provide workshops to establish more green teams within different congregations. And they're having an impact not only on their own congregation, but on the communities in which they live. And so I think we are seeing some wonderful examples that are taking place. And hopefully it will continue.
So there's two questions here about your presentation and also the documentary that you showed. Will they be available later, and how can people access them?
The video that I use, Turtle World, is available on YouTube. And so if you just type in Turtle World, you will find it there. Okay, I do not know if this video is available. I don't know if it was recorded. Was it, Joey?
Yeah, this video is being recorded right now. So you'll be able to find this video on the festival Facebook page as well as Equation's website.
Okay, and you're welcome to share it with anyone.
Okay, the next question is from Deb. You mentioned the need to create new institutions. Do you know of ways that diverse religions have come together to form new institutions?
That's a really good question. I don't know that I know that they have come together to form new institutions, but I think what I see is that many of them are beginning to recognize the need to work on systemic change, which ultimately leads to the formation of new institutions. Systemic change is not easy because it makes us challenge a lot of the values that we have held as sacred. You know, as a country, we hold capitalism as sacred, and yet we know today that it doesn't work for the world. And so there's a need for us to, first of all, look at systemic change. And that's another whole presentation. But to look at the institutions which we currently have. For instance, our congregations. What are they doing to make changes? Are they divesting? Are they creating not necessarily institutions, but new ways for people to engage with environmental sustainability? How about schools? Are our institutions of higher learning teaching sustainability initiatives? How about government? What's happening at our local level? Are the institutions of which we are a part acting faithfully? Do we appreciate and support the initiatives they are taking? Do we challenge our political leaders by letters to the editor? By calling? By visiting their offices? We have elected people to do a job. Are they doing the job for which we have elected them? That's one of the strengths of a democracy, is the ability to challenge our elected leaders. And so I think new institutions will arise out of those kinds of initiatives, even if they aren't here yet.
The next question is, much of your talk is focused on collaboration. In this area, I know that Faith Communities Go Green is active and has resources. Can you share some suggestions for sharing resources across congregations?
Well, I would certainly say to go to our website, Faith Communities Go Green, and all of our materials there are available. I would also begin to suggest that we look at congregations that are within our geographic area. You know, any place in Cincinnati within a 10-block radius, there are multiple houses of worship. Have we thought about contacting each other to talk about some of these things? Starting a book club among the people that are right in our own environment. looking at what's happening in our own, in our own neighborhoods. Is there land there that we could begin using for a community garden? How about hosting a presentation on native plants? Can we begin to look at that? I think all initiatives have to start locally. They don't start at the top, they start at the bottom. When we began Faith Communities Go Green, one of the people we interviewed was from Faith in Place, which is a similar organization out of Chicago. They've been in existence for 20 years and have over 350 communities involved. And one of the things that the head of that organization told us is, don't start with the pastors. Start with 2 or 3 people in your congregation who are committed to environmental sustainability, and it will grow from there. And I think that's true. The pastor has many, many things on his plate. This becomes just one more. So it becomes we who have to take the initiative, certainly involve and invite the head of our religious congregations to be part of it. But let's take the first step.
Great. And this is the last question. If somebody's pastor or religious leader isn't supportive of focusing on environmental protection, what can congregants do?
That's where it takes collective action. They like having money in the collection plate. And so maybe you say, I'm putting this money toward an environmental organization now, since our congregation is not engaged in that. Maybe a group of you have to go and speak with the pastor. It takes collective action. One voice is sometimes very soft, but multiple voices are amplified. And I think the pastor does care about what congregants think and feel. And so that's why I think the gentleman from Faith in Life told us, or Faith in Place, begin with congregants, start organizing people. And if a pastor is not involved and he begins to see that the congregation is, then maybe that will help to bring him along. Suggest some readings for him. There are multiple really good authors out there that aren't all doom and gloom. An excellent one is Catherine Hayhoe, Saving Us, which is, bridging the gaps. How do we do that? There are multiple ones, and there are organizations here in town. I'm currently the program director at EarthConnection. Our website is scEarthConnection.org, and we have multiple resources on ours. Imago is another organization in town. Equation, Faith for Earth, all of these are organizations that are here that are more than willing to lend a hand. Equation does a marvelous job of trying to bring religious congregations together around multiple issues. Any of you who were at the event on Sunday can see the excitement, the wonderful sharing that was taking place, and the tremendous respect that was there for each other. And so all of those are things that we can do.
Thank you so much, Sister CJ. I'm just going to put in the chat really quick a little link for everybody to make sure that they know where to go for the rest of the week's virtual programming. As I put up this closing slide, feel free to make any closing remarks you'd like to, and then we'll see the rest of you all at the next event.
Well, I'd like to thank all of you for participating in this event. And I did put my email on the first slide, which is cjwilliengo@gmail.com. And I'm more than happy to answer any questions you may have. And look at our website for possible programs. We do a number of different kinds of programming here. And we are doing them as webinars so that more people can participate. Come and visit. The Sisters of Charity just built a brand new net zero building for our ministries, and that is open to NGO or for nonprofit organizations to use for free for their events. And so there's lots of different people around who can help. Imago is a wonderful organization. Green Umbrella has a list of multiple different organizations. So take the time to look, take the time to find just one. Can't belong to all of them at one time. None of us can. Start today by saying, I'm going to do one thing. And then hopefully it'll lead to more. Thank you so much for your participation.